review. I want to tell you, first of all, there's so much in the news, and we are going to get to all of it throughout the next 3 hours. But I want to tell you some stories about health care in the United States and in other places. And let's start with the United States. Thank you, Arthur. This latest story from Gallup. Gallup just did a poll, and they discovered that the first year of the Trump administration, uninsured Americans, Americans without access to health care other than a hospital emergency room, had been going down steadily. I mean, it had radically dropped as a result of the passage of the the Affordable Care Act, the ACA, and also known as Obamacare. And when the Republicans started taking it apart, and Trump has been systematically taking it apart, and the Republican tax scam that was passed a month or so ago, added another piece to taking it apart, that being the individual mandate, got rid of that. The number of uninsured Americans actually went up by over 3 million people during the first almost year of the Trump administration. And they note the number of uninsured, this is Max Greenwood in The Hill, the number of uninsured Americans in 2017 saw its largest single-year increase since the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. According to Gallup's Share Care Wellbeing Index, number of Americans without health insurance rose by 3.2 million people. Prior to that, it had fallen to a record low in the final quarter of 2016, the last quarter of President Obama's presidency. So there's this amazing story by Jen Tsakonas over in The Guardian today. She's telling the story of what happened 7 years ago or 11 years ago or something like that. It was some years ago, 11 years ago, when there was no Affordable Care Act in the United States. And health insurance companies could play all the kinds of games that Donald Trump and the Republicans, Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, virtual certainty, your elected Republicans want to bring this back, right? So she had twins. She got pregnant, she had twins, and very often when you have twins, you have premature births. She had a premature birth, and the kids ended up in the neonatal ICU, the NICU, the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, which is expensive. And she writes, "It had never occurred to me the final repercussions someone could encounter because of an ongoing medical situation. We were a middle-class family with college degrees and solid full-time jobs in marketing and construction management. We owned our own house. We had very little debt. We had a savings account, retirement accounts, and comprehensive medical insurance. We traveled once or twice a year to exotic locations," and she goes on and on. "We thought we were prepared for anything, but never could have imagined this situation. In addition to the extreme guilt and anxiety I suffered during our months in the hospital, we also had the incredible shame that comes with not being able to pay your bills. Many of the procedures my kids needed were not covered by our so-called comprehensive medical plan. Our neonatal intensive care room was billed at $10,000 per day per child." They had 2 kids, $20,000 a day. And that was just for the room. "Doctors, nurses, specialists, tests, and drugs were additional. Our insurance covered 1 X-ray a day, and most days required multiple ones, which they would bill to us directly. One of our vaccines needed for 3 years wasn't covered at all, and it was $3,600 a month. By the time the boys hit 18 months old, we had exceeded the cap on our $2 million insurance policy and incurred $450,000 of medical debt. We liquidated our retirement accounts, our savings accounts, sold everything we owned to try and pay it off. When I realized our savings weren't enough, we listed an estate sale and opened our doors to crowds of Craigslist shoppers, telling them everything is for sale, and let people wander our house and offer us dollars for our furniture and collectibles we had worked so hard to acquire. I remember someone offering us $300 for our master bed, and I accepted. At this point, who needed a bed to sleep on?" And then she talks about how Obamacare would have made none of that happen. She says, "We lost our home, our cars, our possessions, and most importantly, our dignity." That was pre-Obamacare, okay? Now, I'd just like to contrast that with a dear friend of mine, one of my best friends who lives in the UK. And this friend of mine got sick a few days ago, as we all do, right? Not feeling well. And sent me this note saying, I don't feel well enough to go into town to be seen even by taxi. She called the doctor's office, right? And they don't want to come to me. Now, when I got that note, that email, I was like, well, gee, I'm sorry to hear you're not feeling well, but wait a minute, your doctor comes to you? And yeah, apparently. Then the next day, that was a couple of days ago, then the next day, she says, I got through to the home visit arranger today, and she said she'd probably get somebody out at lunchtime. Then I got a call from the doctor. He was determined not to come out. And then a few hours later, my doctor just came out and gave me an examination. We had a nice long chat. She still thinks it's just a stomach bug. And so this is, I mean, this is the UK, right? Your doctor comes to you, and you don't pay anything for it. It's paid for by everybody in the UK. People take care of each other there. Here in the United States, you've got to sell your home, your car, your couch, your bed, just to take, this is nuts. And in the context of this, now look at what Matt Bevins is doing in Kentucky. And look at what Republicans in a whole bunch of other states want to do. Republicans in Arizona, Arkansas, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Maine, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Utah, and Wisconsin are all trying to add work requirements to Medicaid. Keep in mind, the vast majority of people on Medicaid are elderly people in nursing homes and children, and people who are disabled. And the Republicans are adding work requirements, and not just that. Andy Slavitt tweeting about this. He says, you know, Kentucky, of course, this was a few days ago, became the first state to require Medicaid beneficiaries to work or lose access. They're also requiring very poor people to pay premiums or lose coverage for extended periods. Here's how it works. Number one, there's a literacy provision. This is, you know, from Stephen Miller's summary of this. State-approved health literacy or financial literacy course. Beneficiaries who are in an eligibility suspension for failure to meet their requirement. In other words, if you don't take this course on health literacy or financial literacy, you know, tell your boss, sorry, I can't come to work at McDonald's today. I've got to go to this course, right? And you lose your job or whatever. If you don't take the course, your health insurance, your Medicaid gets canceled, and you can't even reapply for 6 months. There's a 6-month lockout. If you lose it for any reason, if you forget to fill out your paperwork, if the paperwork comes in a day late, if you pay your premium, even though it's very low, if you pay your premium a day late, bang, you're out for 6 months. And if you have and it goes on, consequences for beneficiaries who do not pay premiums, 6 months non-eligibility, disenrollment, 6-month non-eligibility for certain populations, limiting managed care organizations, et cetera. And then they say also, if you have a problem, call our Medicaid offices. Well, they have cut their Medicaid offices to the point that, you know, you can be sitting on hold for hours while you're trying to get to work. Right? This is Matt Bevin, the brand new Republican governor of Kentucky. Right? Remember when Kentucky was leading the nation? What was it? KenCare, Kentucky Care, whatever. There was a funny name for it. It was a cute name for it. He is smashing it. And the state now expects, this is the state, expects 95,000 Kentuckians to lose their health coverage as a result of what this Republican governor is doing. NPR gave him a real nice little fluff interview on Saturday. It was nuts. And plus, the state of Kentucky is going to give up $820 million of Medicaid expansion. It's like, it's not even costing the state to have Medicaid. In fact, it's actually costing the state to damage Medicaid this way by adding this so-called work requirement. And now you've got these other, 14 Republican-controlled states that are trying to do the exact same thing.